Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Salty Talk, where we get salty about all things that are related to community ministry, community outreach. We are so glad that you have decided to join us today. You could have clicked to anywhere else, but you decided to click on Salty Talk. And I promise you, you made a good decision today. We have an amazing guest. Her name is Carrie Bradley, and we're going to be talking about human trafficking. That's the umbrella term, but we're going to get salty as we do, and we're going to take this really nuanced and talk specifically about a particular form of trafficking that Carrie has a lot of experience with. From an experiential standpoint and also from a service standpoint. She's doing amazing work in the city of Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm gonna be quiet because what I have to say pales in comparison to what she has to say. I think is gonna really help. I think it's gonna really change the game in a lot of ways. And most importantly, make us more effective as community ministers as we do our job of communicating and spreading the light of Jesus Christ. So Carrie, thank you for being with us. I also want to shout out my amazing co-hosts, Erica and Becky.
Hey,
We're
hey.
literally
Laura?
representing the entire country. We got Becky in Kentucky, Erica on the left coast, the best coast in California. Carrie is in Arizona, and I am in Ohio. 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 In
Wow, we
case
got
you
a
didn't,
cheer.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
good.
It's a real thing out here. We're Buckeye fans. So, Carrie, tell us about all the things about your whole life. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just so excited about this subject matter and the light that it can bring and the change that it can bring to so many lives. So I'm gonna plop it over to Becky, and she has a question for you.
Yeah, we just want to hear. Thank you so much for just being a part of this podcast. We're super excited to hear your story. And so, why don't you start there? Why don't you start with your story a little bit and just give us a little bit of context and then, kind of lead us up to that moment where God first showed up in your story.
Okay, great. My name is Carrie Bradley. I'm the founder of IdentiFreed, which rescues women from trafficking, domestic violence, and addiction. For me, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My father was a Vietnam vet who had a lot of PTSD and was exposed to Agent Orange, and there wasn't a lot of resources. So he was a good man, but he was also an alcoholic and very violent. And so by the time I was 18, I ran away and became extremely vulnerable to those that are awake at bar close times. And that is how I got trafficked. So it was Aryan Brotherhood, Hell's Angels, that they would say, you can stay at my house or you can stay at so-and-so's house. And it would be Mama Linda or Uncle Keith or these familial names where if I were stopped by an officer or someone saying, where are you going? Oh, I'm just going to uncle's or aunts or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. Didn't think anything of it. Just thought, oh, these are like my new family and they care about me and they're taking care of me. But then there's always a time where it's like, hey, you've been here a while, you owe us some money. Why don't you go work at the strip club? Tried to do that, didn't like it. Why don't you go work at an escort agency? Didn't like that, kept leaving those places. Until one day a gentleman came along from one of those houses and I thought he was amazing, went with him and ended up getting locked in a house and raped and beaten for 6 months. So that began my journey of being trafficked, and they turned me into what's called a breeder. So that's definitely like an Aryan Brotherhood saying, if you don't comply and give them what they want, then they'll take what they want, and they end up taking your kids. And so all of my kids were taken by them. And then it was very crazy because the guy that locked me in the house was either a snitch or an undercover, because he just kept doing crazy things like supplying arms to the Mexican mafia and all kinds of stuff. And he would just continually get back out. There were raids at our house. They saw what was happening and no one helped me. After I lost my kids, I cried out to God, if I could just hold one of my kids for 5 more seconds, I'd give my life. And that was my God encounter, because he heard my cry. And it was by an act of of God that got me out. And that was 13 years of being out in that at that time, well, 12 when that happened. And that's what turned everything around. I found out I was pregnant again. I couldn't stop. Um, and this guy from Florida from 12 years prior got a hold of me and flew me out. And that's where I got sober. I came back, started going to Church for the Nations, working my steps, just seeking deliverance in every area, and just getting radically set free. And then when it came time to have that baby, he was stillborn, and I was in the middle of my steps. And it was like a flash of light. I remember that prayer I prayed when I was homeless. If I could just hold one of my kids for 5 more seconds, I would give my life. But I had given my life to the Lord through the process of trying to turn my life around for that baby. And that baby had Potter's syndrome. And my dad came to the hospital and said, there's a verse in the Bible that says he is the potter and we are the clay. And God used that baby to turn my life around. And ever since then, I realized, like, wow, he doesn't hate me, he loves me. And I went all in for helping women like me. And that's how IdentiFreed was started. I just started serving, I started ministering to women just like me. So, yeah. And then now we have 2 outreach centers, one in Prescott, one in Phoenix. We disciple women. We do outreach on the streets. The outreach centers are thrift stores, but the women can come in and get clothes and hygiene for free. We now have 6 survivors working for us, and we have 2 vehicles that they can drive. So it's a great life. I've gone back and got 3 degrees. I have a daughter who has only known the Lord, and she's like a little pastor. I love her. And so I have my bachelor's in accounting, my master's of divinity, and I just train women up in business and ministry, and it's a great life serving Him. So
I love that. I love that. Carrie, I just want to say, like, that's a lot. That is a lot. And so, and just the resilience, and it is just an honor just to be in the same room and hear your story and to see the resilience and the faith that has come through that and through your story. Girl, the Lord has done a mighty work in your life. And gosh, I'm just so glad. I'm so glad that you had that moment. So thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for having me on the podcast. You guys are great.
Oh, we're so excited to get to just continue to get to know you. I know, we kind of had a planning meeting and wanted to learn a little bit about you, but hearing your story again, just for the second time, but I'm still a little bit like, it's hard to find some words, because I know that behind how you just nicely kind of packaged all of those years of abuse, trauma, coercion, manipulation, like just everything you could imagine happening in your life. The way that you've shown up here and how you just rattle off the ways that God's led you to complete victory over the enemy that's trying to stomp you down, and how you are just like turning him on his head, and God leading the charge as you are just taking on kind of goal after goal. Like, you just rattle on 3 degrees that you have, and just the way that you're connected to your daughter. And I know that there's probably so many things that you continue to fight every day, like keep the enemy away. But man, God is on the throne, and you can just tell by the way that you're living your life, and so that's amazing. And it's just so cool to hear how God has redeemed, continues to work, in your story. I think to the parts of the story where you talked about people saw me and they didn't do anything. People of figures that should be ones that we look to for safety, right? And whoever's listening to this, most of us listening, listener, you probably are sitting in the seat of community minister, but we know people that are in different seats all throughout our communities. And people have these misconceptions of of women, likely women, girls, in that they want to be in these situations, or they chose this or whatever. So could you talk a little bit about what you think the largest misconception is of women who are in the life, and maybe moments when you didn't feel heard, seen, valued, like, hello, this is a human life here that we're ignoring?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest misconception that I hear is from community members that think, well, I'll just say it. One of the women came into the store the other day. She said she had visited Phoenix, where we do outreach, and that she had taken a group of kids on a field trip. And the kids said, well, why are the girls dressed like that? The girls that were out prostituting. And she said, well, some of them just want attention. And it was like,
Mm.
I think when a girl gets sucked into that lifestyle, like for me, when I was locked in a house and raped and beaten, that man said he was going to kill my family if I left, you know? So
Mhm.
that is, I hear that time and time again with women. Oftentimes their lives are threatened, their IDs are taken. There's
Mhm.
it's mostly a vulnerable population, aged out foster kids,
Mhm.
women who are leaving bad situations, even elderly, they are trafficking now that aren't
Mhm.
even mentally capable, you know? So I think the misconception is that they have made that choice to be there because they want attention, or that
Mhm.
I think what I hear from police a lot is, well, those girls just don't listen and they don't want help. But for
Mm.
us as a ministry, we go out and we just are the hands and feet. We give them clothes, we give them food, we give them hygiene. And we keep going out every week and loving on the same women because persistence breaks down resistance, and not in
Mm.
a controlling way. We're not out there with blowhorns. We're just showing the love of Jesus. But
Mhm.
like the one of the girls that is now in the Dream Center doing very well, we ministered to her 30 times over 4 years.
Mhm.
And she's doing great now, but it took a lot of time for her to trust us. Because if you think about this element of, oh, I've been around these men who've threatened my life, my family's
Mm.
lives, I can't leave. So, this ability to be able to trust is the biggest thing that we work on as survivors with God, with our relationship with God.
Mhm.
And then that starts just with the people helping you who are showing you who God is. So, as
Mhm.
ministers, it's our job to just be loving, love them where they're
Mhm.
at. They act crazy, we just walk away and come back next week. You know what I'm saying? But we're
Mhm.
not like,
Mhm.
hey, we're not going to help that person anymore. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
think we have a mindset within the church for believers that's based on Matthew 18:16 through 18 about church correction. But when we're talking street outreach, it's very different.
Yeah.
If you look at how Jesus operated with those that were broken, it was very different
Mhm.
than when he was talking to Pharisees.
Mm.
Wow.
Yep.
It
That
really
is so
was.
good.
That's good.
Gary,
That's good.
I feel like I'm in the kitchen and the temperature is rising because you're
Mhm.
dropping some gems, and when you were talking, I thought about this idea of connecting before correcting, right?
Mm.
And then we look at the ministry of Jesus. He was on the earth for 30 years, 3 decades before he starts his ministry. So
Mhm.
he found value in connecting with humanity for 3 decades before he starts correcting humanity, before he
Mm.
starts
Yeah.
introducing salvation.
Mhm.
And I think that, us as community ministers, as Jesus followers, those of the way, whatever label you want to put on us, we can probably glean a little bit from Jesus's ministry of doing the work of connecting before correcting. And you see, like, this is amazing. He connected 3 times or 10 times as long as he corrected in
Mhm.
his actually
Mhm.
public function of ministry, right?
Yeah.
So you got 30 years of connecting, and then you have 3 years of ministry, 3.5 years of ministry. And so I think we kind of miss it in church settings and in some ministry settings where we want to just bring correction and we have these misconceptions and misconstrued ideas and uneducated thoughts and misinformed, there's all the things. So
Mhm.
can you just like unpack that a little more about like what you would say to a church or an organization that is faith-based on how they can be more effective in this space of
Mm.
trafficking and really, like you mentioned, being the hands and feet of Jesus. Like unpack a little bit for us what that looks like and maybe even what it doesn't look like.
Okay. Yeah,
Sure.
I think the important piece with women who have been trafficked or abused is building one on one relationship. So,
Mhm.
although we may have discipleship, I work one on one with my women. And a lot of times in the church, we're missing that walking alongside of people. Jesus did that
Mhm.
with his disciples, he lived with them for 3 years. So, the women that we
Mhm.
work with, they often become part of our family, you know, and we just walk alongside of them in life. And I think that's a really big piece because you can't speak into someone's life unless they have accepted you into a
Mhm.
discipleship relationship. And that is a trust building walk that
Mhm.
can't be done from the platform. There's too much separation. You could go to a
Mhm.
church for 10 years and never meet the pastor face to face in these big churches.
Mhm.
And, you know, granted, we have an influx of people coming in because there's revival happening, and that's great. But we still need to have these small connections and not just small connect groups. I love Celebrate Recovery, and that's great too, because then there's like sponsorship happening and things are happening in that space. But yeah, I think a lot of times we take, you know, Matthew 18:16 through 18, you know, if someone's caught in a sin, you confront them, and then you bring two people, and then and then if they don't get it together, there's this excommunication, but then there's no action after that.
Mm.
Jesus says to bind and loose, but what we as the church should be doing is activating the gifts of the Spirit to provide deliverance within that correction space, and to really have a lot of ministries that are offering healing, you know, from deliverance to Celebrate Recovery. If we're not offering that as a church, then we're really not even opening up a space for true discipleship and healing. And so what we've noticed here since we've come to Prescott is there are churches on every corner. Most of them will not allow the gifts of the Spirit from the platform or even in their churches at all. And so then you have a lot of very bound people, and you only have maybe one pastor sharing the message, but no one else really using their gifts. There's a model that worked in the church, in the early church, and there were large churches. Obviously, we look at the day of Pentecost, 3,000 people came to Jesus. You know, each day it was growing, but there were also small house churches, and there were women and men leading together. You know, and so there was a space where there was a leader there to lead the women as well, you know. So I think we really have to make sure that we're getting our people well. And oftentimes churches become so inundated that they just throw anyone in a position. We really have to say, do you feel called to this? You know, we don't want to throw someone who's a street minister into children's outreach or vice versa. I've had many churches send their teams to come be trained up by us, and people come out, and I say, watch us and then see where you fit in and you want to jump in. And then I'll guide them as I see where their giftings are. And oftentimes people will get out there and go, get freaked out and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was really happening, and I don't think I should be in there. And I'm like, okay, why don't you prayer walk around the bus? You know what I mean? And so it's like, hey, everyone can have a place, but you may not be the one that's called to be the one directly ministering to that woman, but there are women who are able to do that. And so I think as leaders, we really need to be sensitive to that, because most churches are like, oh, I want to build an outreach team, and they want to have like 200 people, and we fed 200 today. They always want to have big numbers, and this many people got saved, and this. In fact, our reports to the Assemblies of God always ask how many people were saved, how many people were this, how many, and it's not about the numbers. It's about how many people are really having a good quality of life, really getting set free, really being discipled. And it may only be a handful, but at least their lives are fully restored. So I think really looking at quality versus quantity, and really understanding where your people are called to and giving them the space to grow in that is really important.
I feel like what you're saying is 100% right in line, because misplacing people or encouraging people that you haven't vetted to launch into a space like this, it could really cause harm on both sides, right? Like in some of the experience I've had with just getting to like go on ride-alongs or work with alongside organizations like yours, I just feel this sense of darkness when you're out there. Like, man, it's our job to be the light, but you have to be wise. You have to be really on point on understanding the dynamic you're stepping into and how the enemy is so on the throne in some of these environments, and all of these, right? Like on the blade or in this ring or whatever. Like it's a total spiritual warfare, and if you are ill-equipped, you will be swallowed up and spit out, right? Like it is not no joke. And what I hear you saying as you talk about the church, I was thinking before you even went into it, and before Jerome even really phrased that question, about the role that community played in your life. And when you first talked about it, it's almost like the enemy used a perverted version of community to suck you in. And that has got to mess with your trust, of course, but also like safety and safe people and boundaries, and all of that just gets like muddied up and thrown out, right? And so can you talk a little bit about maybe your experience with how to navigate healthy relationships coming out of manipulative ones? And maybe it gives some of us in the seat in a church environment, or we want to be really do-gooders, you have to understand what some of these women, girls, men coming out of a life like what you're experiencing and what you have said, what their lenses are as they're looking at the world, because it's not the what lenses we're looking through.
Mhm.
But we sometimes we treat people as though they're the same, and we think it's crazy that they don't understand. We're just trying to do good. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, that has made me think of a few things. So I'll try to stay focused. But I think that first and foremost, we have to, as a church, realize where in the community are they handling this situation well, and that it's not one size fits all. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we get a girl, it's like, okay, is she dual diagnosis? Does she have kids? Does she have a dog? Has she been through DV? Like, what are all the things going on here? First of all, does she need detox? So when we came to Prescott, I have to investigate and learn this city because I don't know. I've been in Phoenix 17 years. That's where I got sober. I've sponsored hundreds of women. I know where to resource anybody anytime. Up here, it's a whole new thing. So as you're delving into this new realm, it's finding out what is in the community that works and leaning on that. A lot of times
Mm-hmm.
churches want to have us, our ministry, our DNA, and only push our ministries because we're building a brand. Whoa, that's really scary because there are already a lot of organizations that know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
That we could really be harming people if we're forcing just our solutions. So our first thing is what is going to be a concept that she's going to be able to receive to get her out of this. If she's Native and she wants a Native solution, I will send her to Native American Connections and then say, hey, if you want further discipleship, let us know. We're here for that and we can walk alongside of you. But I'm not trying to force or, push anything on them. If a girl's not ready to lay down cigarettes yet, I'm not going to send her to the Dream Center. I'm going to send her somewhere where she can keep smoking for a minute and then say, hey, you want some discipleship? Because they're going to be, as Jerome says, still smelling like fish. I didn't mean to take you're about to go into that. I love Jerome that you said that. That's great. But it's true. I mean, you can't say, oh, you have to fit in our perfect neat box. And if you don't, you can't come. And so I think we have to be real sensitive about where they're at and what their needs are. And then, and understand that I think sometimes in ministry, we get so excited about doing ministry that we want to be the ones with the solution all the time.
Right.
And that's actually kind of ego and pride because it's like we don't have all the answers all the time. And I've had girls this last week, I've had two girls call me about how do I engage in legal issues and can you help me file this case? And I'm like, well, I'm not a lawyer, but I know defenders of children and I know AATN and they specialize in that. Why don't I refer you out? Because our ministry doesn't have to have the answers to everything.
Right.
And we definitely don't, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, hey, we all got to be working together, and I think it's bridging that divide, especially in churches. They get very siloed and it's like, we are the end time church. We have a harvest that we have to bring in. And the problem is as big as we expected when we read Revelation the first time, you know what I'm saying? So, and when Matthew 24, when Jesus is talking about, it's going to be crazy, man, but the church is supposed to shine brighter. And how do we do that? We do that when we unify and we work together to try to reach people.
I love that, Carrie. And it just I just get so excited. So like when you're talking about like unifying and not working in silos and being together and being one, that's what Jesus instructed us to do, right? He told us to go. He said, if you follow me, I will make you fishers of men. And I'm so glad that you brought up that analogy that I talked about the first time that we talked. But here's like the language is so intentional. So he's going to make us fishers of men, fishers of people, right? We're going to go and gather people. And successful fishermen, fishing industry, they use nets. And nets they're only effective if the nets work. So we have to network so that our nets can work and the net have to be together. They have to be united. Then if we're Jesus followers and we're fishers of men, which that's what he said would happen if we follow him, how are we getting frustrated when the people that we're serving smell like fish?
Right.
Like, when's the last time you've seen a fisherman like, these fish smell like fish? That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Community minister, listener, like watcher of
Yeah.
the podcast, stop gasping at the state of the world. Stop gasping at these women that have been manipulated and trafficked. Stop gasping at these people that are
Yeah.
struggling with addictions. We can't gasp as followers of Jesus. We're the ones
Yeah.
with the answers. Like we
Mm,
have to be that surgeon. Surgeons
Mhm.
aren't shaken by blood.
hmm
Like
Mm.
fishermen, fisher Jesus followers can't be deterred because she's got fishnet stockings on the front. You should be jumping for joy that she decided to show up at your church. Are
hmm
you ready to serve her? Are you ready
Mhm.
to point her to the love of Jesus Christ? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna step down
Yeah.
off my pedestal and just get so
No,
passionate
I
about
think that's
like,
really good.
guys, we got the answers. Let's not run. We're the light.
hmm hmm
Light never runs from darkness. Try it.
Mhm.
Go in the dark room, turn the light on, watch the darkness scatter. The light
Yeah.
does not scatter. So
Preach.
Mm.
Okay.
Love
that's it.
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Well, and
Love that. Love that.
I feel like the way you're talking about, we use that analogy of nets. This is not like spear fishing, like they didn't weren't like go
Mm,
get your
so
spear
good.
gun and go
Yes.
take down the one, right? And sometimes I think when we think about answering the what do you do for human trafficking, like, well, I have to set up a human trafficking ministry, and then I have to figure out the one thing or the thing I want to do or how am I. It's like no, that I feel like the way the church can be the most helpful is think way back. Carrie, you talked about your vulnerability. If you are serving vulnerable women and children and you become educated about human trafficking and you start to train your people to have eyes and ears on where they can be looking for some of these red flags, but also how they can become a protective factor, I think you're on the prevention end, right? You may never be like, I saw this woman leave the life and I saw her change her life around. Maybe you get to be a part and go way upstream and you get to be a part of helping to protect the vulnerable
Mhm.
while there are others at the end of the stream helping people pull women, well, not pull them out, but you know what I mean? Like help meet them when they're ready. But your approach to human trafficking, listener, doesn't always have to be, this is my church name's ministry and here's what we do. It could
Mhm.
be, we've really like shifted the way we look at all the ministry we do for women and children and how we can link arms with some organizations. And Carrie, you talked about like you have legal people that could help somebody walking, to try to get their legal documents or whatever they're needing. Gosh, listener, think about the people that are in your ministry and the skill sets that they bring to the world and how you could
Mhm.
walk alongside a single mom who's trying to come up out of fill in the blank. If they're vulnerable to homelessness, if they're vulnerable to aging out of the foster system, if they're vulnerable to DV, they either were vulnerable to human trafficking or they could have HT ties to their story that they're just not ready to disclose. They don't need to
Mhm.
disclose. They may not identify, but
Yeah.
that net is not like here's the one strand, here's the one part of the woven net that's Eastside Church, and here's the other part of the woven net that's it's all
Yeah.
together, and it's kind of it's a little bit not as specific, it's not as pinpointed,
Mhm.
it's like a holistic. So I think, man, church, could we be a little more holistic about how we welcome people,
Mhm.
how we even approach organizations or the individuals walking with organizations? I think we could be doing a really good work in linking arms. Let's start there, right?
Yeah.
And then let's get to a place where we could take some notes from some of the stuff Carrie's doing and link arms with organizations like that.
Agreed. Agreed. And getting salty with us, we want you to just kind of frame up for us while you were, or while people are in the life. What are some common just issues or misconceptions, or not misconceptions, but mistakes that people make in interacting with people who are in the life? Because we want to understand what those mistakes are, and then
Mhm.
I think I feel like you do this beautifully because you were in the life and now you're not. Could you tee
Mhm.
up maybe like some interactions, like when you were in the life, what are some common mistakes that people made with you? And then how can we make that better?
Yeah, well, that's so to stay focused, I will talk about how my case was handled, like a DV case, but then I will also talk about our rules for outreach because they're birthed out of what's helpful and harmful. So I think that would
Mhm.
be two good things to talk about. So I think one of the things with trafficking, a big misconception is that once a girl hits 18, they treat it like domestic violence and they assume that she has chosen to be there. So we're trying to get legislation changed on that to increase the age to 25, or at least to include the verbiage vulnerable population, because now they're
Mhm.
trafficking seniors. So I think that's a big
Mhm.
one that oftentimes when we have DV cases coming in, um, you can think that it's just a girl choosing to be there, but there might be a lot of underlying things. Now, when the police came and got me out when I was locked in that house, Um, I had bruises from head to toe. I had eggs on my head because my head had been slammed into the cement. I could barely even, I was just like a zombie. And they handed me a card and said, "You should call this number tomorrow and get in here." And it was like, huh? I don't think the fog lifted for at least a week or two, and probably never until I got
Mm,
sober and experienced the Lord. So it was kind of
Mhm.
like, wait, what? And so I think just handing someone a card and going, "Hey, you should call here," is like,
mhm,
that's not really helpful. So
Mhm.
I think that that can be a big one that's hard. What we do when we're on outreach is we have certain rules that help us stay safe as a team. So we train up every mission team, every church that comes in the same way, and it's lessons that we've learned along the way to stay safe, but also to prevent too much churchiness from scaring away people. Because
Mhm. Yeah.
going with blowhorns and yelling at them is never helpful. So ours
mhm,
are we never debate the Bible. We always pray with our eyes open. We don't hold them hostage in prayer.
Mhm.
We're
Mhm.
dealing with people who have not been in church in a very long time. So you're not doing
Right.
like a 20-minute, altar call prayer.
mm,
You have to be sensitive to
Right.
their response to you. I've had women literally back women in the corner on our bus and be like, "No, you really need to get out," and their whole body language is like, "Help me, get me out of here," and the person's like
Oh
not
my
even reading
gosh.
the signals, and it's like, pay attention, man. And I have to go, "Hey,
Mm.
let her out of the bus."
mm,
So it's like, be sensitive to how they're responding to you. You know what I mean? We
Mhm.
have a rule that's like a code yellow. If someone's acting kind of crazy or they're, yelling or they're fighting, that's a code yellow to keep the team safe. And I think a lot of times people bring church teams and mission teams out to very dangerous places and don't pay attention to like, hey, we need
Mhm.
to be communicating with each other. And even
mm,
in the church, it's good to
Yep.
help each other. Like, hey, we have a code yellow here, and we probably need to ramp up how we're triaging this. And
mhm,
so,
Mhm.
example, we took a team to Skid Row, a mission team, and one woman handed this woman a bottle of water, and she said, "I don't want your water." And she knocked it out of her hand. And so that lady should have called a code yellow. She did not. The next woman who walked
mm,
up, who was the pastor's wife, by the way, handed this lady a bottle of water, and she got decked in the mouth. So we want to
Yeah.
always be watching each other's back, communicating with each other,
Mhm.
making sure that we're looking out for each other, in the church.
Mhm.
The code red is if a girl wants to get out. So we can yell code red and her pimp doesn't know that, hey, we're getting this girl out right now. But
Mhm.
also if there's danger and we need to leave, we need our volunteers to leave. So we need to go now and we need to leave all of our stuff, but no volunteers and take off all that. We try to
Mhm.
be in the same vehicle in a bus. Unfortunately, we had to sell our bus this month, but we're hoping for another one. But for example, we rescued an 18-year-old girl from a 30-year-old trafficker, and he unloaded his 9mm clip at our bus when we drove away. So we've learned certain rules, like always park where you can pull out, always park in a well-lit area.
Mhm.
We don't ever debate the Bible because there are guys that are also true that will come up and try to debate with you just to start with you, and you have to be
Mhm.
wise.
mhm,
So I think there's just a lot of things like we don't put hands on these women unless we ask, hey, is it okay if I pray with you? Do you want to hold hands? Are you okay if I lay my hand on you? Can
I think
I?
mhm,
that's a big
Asking
one. That's
permission
a
is a
big
big
one.
one
Yeah.
because I think
mhm,
we get so churchy that it's like everyone wants my prayer, and it's like, no, they may
mhm,
not want to be touched, man. You know what I
Yeah,
mhm,
mean? So
ask.
you
Touch is a
have to
big one to
ask.
like, especially in this industry. Like, yes,
Right.
is touch okay? Like we
Is
ask
it
that just
okay?
in women's
Yeah.
ministries and weekends. It's like, hey, is touch okay? Like,
Yeah. It's
actually,
a good one.
no, it's don't touch me. Like, okay, thank you. I'm glad I asked.
mm,
Yeah,
Yeah.
some people, have had so much trauma they don't want that. So I think we just
Yeah.
have to, and then the big one is this is that every time we go into the darkness to pull women out, the enemy hits hard, hits our
Hmm.
family, hits us, hits our
Hmm.
finances, hits our ministry, hits our volunteers, hits our donors
Absolutely.
even hits
mm,
guys that are coming to help with the plumbing. And literally, like
mm,
I've had to, and so we really need to be praying together over each other. And then at the end of every outreach, doing a cleansing prayer to pull anything
Hmm.
off of us that might have attached to us. Because I have seen people that are totally normal just flip and go out and go down. And we as
mhm,
leaders really have to be monitoring that in how we're dealing with the women. But really just to sum it all up, because I know I kind of went way off track with all of our rules, but there's a purpose. It's to educate, but also in dealing with these women, be sensitive know that if they even trust you enough to take a piece of pizza from you, that you've won that night. And I think as Christians, it's all about soul winning. Soul winning. How many have come off the streets? It's not about numbers. It's about that they built trust with you today. Maybe it was pizza this time. Maybe it's a person next time. Maybe the next time she even comes on the bus. And that's a big deal. By the time she actually receives prayer, we know we've already got her, but it might take about 30 more times before she says, I'm done. And so I think when we're dealing with the very broken, we have this timeline and expectation that they should be well by now. And that's just not the case. It may take a while, and we have to have patience in that.
I want to talk a little bit. We want to give you a chance to remind us of what your organization's name is. And I think you've been talking so much about the role that you play kind of on this continuum of care for this cause, right? There's the prevention side, but this kind of like the rescue, and then there's the restoration. There's like the whole kind of, as we walk with survivors. Can you kind of help lay out a little bit of some of the other kind of like categories in individuals that are walking not alongside someone who's been sex trafficked, but trying to engage with the cause, and how people can learn more in their areas? I know you talked about, when we were chatting to prep for this, we talked about whether it's conferences or literature to read, or websites or podcasts or different things. Maybe where are you pointing people to learn about human trafficking and sex trafficking outside of your organization for those that need to get educated in this area?
It depends on the person. I will say, if you're, there are some organizations where they do very intensive, very formal education, but it's for like police officers, and it's often quite graphic and can be very triggering. So I would say, as a church, when you're preparing to train your people, I would research in the area who's doing training, and look for those that are survivor led, as well as because survivors are going to have a very unique perspective on what's going on in your area. Because each area is different with regard to there's so many different levels of trafficking and what happens. So I think really looking for the survivors that are doing something to get that type of training. There are all law enforcement, because we know that 100% of the federal funding, and yes, this is definitely a pet peeve of mine, goes into educating police forces. So they get billions of dollars, and they get all the federal funding for education purposes. So they should have a lot of material. And if they don't, I would ask them why. But again, to that point, those that are educating them can be very traumatizing. And you want to make sure that within your group, if you have survivors, that you would do a trauma warning, because I've had massive trauma triggers and had to run out of a room from their trainings. They're very graphic. And so I would be very cautious of that with your people, so that you don't have someone spin out. Also, a lot of people are now starting like trafficking conventions where they're doing awareness. Some will do concerts that only profit them, but then there are some organizations, and you could tell the health of an organization because they will actually start doing these educational ones. And I feel like we don't have enough of that. That would be something that would be really great for a church to do, is start actually having some trafficking conventions where you're training and you're bringing in people from caseworkers to police to survivors to one woman that does that really well up here. She's actually trying to start a ranch for children. It's called Heartland Ranch. Her name is Chris Benhoff. So she's amazing. But she does trafficking conventions, and she's done it better than anyone I've ever seen. I love speaking for her. There are times where I've spoken for people where I felt like they just used my story to raise money, but she really truly wants to see her community trained up, and she does a great job of bringing everyone together. She'll do everything from training on the apps and what's going on, and casework and police, and then social workers from school and survivors. And so she'll have a mix of everyone across the board. And then she will do warnings. Hey, if this training is too much, I just want you to know this is going to happen, because she cares about the people who are actually there. And so I think that is probably a really good model to follow. For me anyway. I want to be like her when I grow up. She's really great. So anyway.
Love it. Well, and I think, you're naming off people in your community. And I think that we should start to, like you said, look in your community. And then there are some nationwide kind of foundational things. But this is a real this is an area where the enemy is on the throne, and it's not even pretty. That's not even a good word. It's going to shake you.
Maybe you have people who are squeamish about hitting the streets, then they can start doing like prayer and praying over and binding these principalities over these areas, which we do before we go out on every outreach. You see a difference. If you don't pray and you go on outreach, it is chaos. When you pray and you battle against those principalities, man, there is a difference, and you have authority, and the enemy's no longer on the throne because you're taking the land for him. So intercession is a big deal when you're stepping out into this. You can't do it without that.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, man, I've just loved getting a chance to continue to learn more about you, Carrie, about how God's worked in your life, how he's using you, and just how he's giving you a front row seat to be able to see how he's working in others' lives too. And for the listener, I want to remind you, this Carrie story, it's unique, but unfortunately there are others that have a similar story, but every story doesn't look exactly like this. So I want to encourage you, get educated. When you understand kind of the various scenarios that these women or individuals that are being trafficked are walking through, the empathy continues to grow. And then I'm going to be praying that God will lead you to figure out how can you engage in this cause. We are excited to be able to have another discussion around this topic as well with a completely different individual. But Carrie, it's been so amazing to connect with you. And I feel like we go way back now. We're all, you're not just Jerome's friend, you're all of our friends. So
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So listener, thanks for tuning in. We are so grateful that you took the time and energy, and be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all the different platforms. And you can always go to communityminister.network to tune into what the network is doing. And as we always say, be sure to stay salty.